Hello and welcome back to the Stacey West YouTube channel and welcome back to League One. We obviously had a pretty special match last night, but we're going to get back into our league form to hopefully try and get a win, just to try and bounce back from some of the recent form. So to look ahead to Cheltenham on Saturday, I am joined by Joe from the Robins Report. How are we doing, Joe?
Yeah, not too bad. Good. Football aside, yeah.
Yes. Well, I guess we kind of just got to go straight into it. And I know you probably don't want to have to talk about this. And some of the questions I've got written down, it feels like I'm a bit of a bully, sort of having to ask these. But look, you guys are 9 games in, bottom of the league, 1 point, no goals. Everybody knows the kind of dire situation you're in. What on earth has gone wrong?
It's a very good question, and I think there's a number of factors that have contributed to where we are right now. To sort of list off some of those, I mean, Alfie May leaving is probably the clearest example of something that's not gone for us. As we stand, he's still the last person to score a league goal for us back in May against the team that he now plays for, which is bizarre when you think about it. So losing him was massive, and you could also query how much money we got for him as well. I think we've had an awful lot of injuries, which haven't helped. I would say the recruitment generally, as we were sort of going through the summer before the season started, we were quite happy with the recruitment. So I don't think that's been, the biggest issue. We had a lot of upheaval with backroom staff as well in the summer. But yeah, ultimately we found ourselves in a situation now where we've got 1 point. We haven't scored a league goal. The only goal we have scored this season was an own goal for us in the Papa John's Trophy. And obviously we've parted ways with our manager last week, which was on balance the right decision. I still think that Wade Elliot deserves a lot of credit for the job he did last season, keeping us up comfortably. And obviously we had a good run in the Papa John's as well. But as much as there were these mitigating factors which were against him, which I've listed off already, I think it was the right decision. And I do feel that whoever the new manager is that comes in will hopefully be able to get more out of these players than we've seen so far this season.
Well, you very much kind of answered the next question, and it was going to be all about was Wade Elliot sacking the right decision? And I've got to be honest, on the outside looking in, it felt really unfair. But at the same time, I totally understand it. Chris, one of the other podcast hosts, he kind of said, at the end of the day, you're outside the transfer window. The only thing that a club can really change at that point is the manager, which you've had to roll the dice. You've had to do, and yeah, it's whether or not it's the right decision. Only time will tell. But at the end of the day, but I guess kind of the other part of the sort of managerial sacking conversation. Obviously, he moved on about this time last week, wasn't it? Tuesday, Wednesday last week, something like that.
Last Wednesday,
yeah. So as soon as it happened, myself and a good few others kind of said, "Oh, well, that's it. That's them beating us. New manager bounce." But obviously, you've not got a manager in. So I guess kind of both the questions is: A, do you think you will have a new man in the dugout by Saturday? And B, who are the current contenders, just leading contenders to be?
So I don't think we'll have a new man in the dugout, but we might have a new man in the stand. I think the appointment could be today, it could be tomorrow. So I think we'll have a new manager, but I'm not sure they'll have had any input ahead of the game with you on Saturday. In terms of who it could be, I'd say based on the bookies odds, which are not the most reliable thing. You've probably been through this in the past when you've been changing managers.
Yeah.
We had a wild one sort of the last couple of days where Scott Brown, the former Fleetwood manager, was all of a sudden a massive favourite, and then got ruled out very quickly by a local news reporter.
Yes, so I saw that tweet from, is it John Palmer?
Yeah, we were quite relieved at that one. So, in terms of the two main candidates, I think we're looking at David Artell, the former Crewe manager, and we're looking at Darryl Clark, the former Bristol Rovers, Walsall, and Port Vale manager.
Yeah.
David Artell was at the game on Saturday.
Okay.
Darryl Clark, I'm not so sure. But I think both myself and the other guys on the Robbins Report feel that both of those would be good appointments. Personally, I'd favour Artell slightly because I feel like the work that he did at Crewe might be similar to what he would have to do for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to give up on this season, but we have to sort of almost future-proof ourselves and look ahead to next season. And you look at the side that he built at Crewe on a small budget, got them promoted into League One, enhanced the careers of some really good young players who've gone on to make a lot of money for that club. But then Darryl Clark's done similar, I guess, as well. He's got a good track record, really popular manager at both Bristol Rovers and Port Vale, and also did a pretty good job at Walsall in between that. So I think those are the two main contenders, and I think we'd both of those would be good options. Yeah,
100%. And like you say, you do have to future-proof yourself. Like, you don't want to give up on the season, but when you're already sort of 6 points adrift of sort of 20th place, there becomes a point where you kind of have to, like you say, get ready for the potentiality of being in League Two next season. And I just hope that whoever you bring in, he gets the opportunity that even if you do get relegated, he's still with you next year to at least try and bring you back up, whether that's straight up or after a season or two. 100%. But that isn't me writing you off immediately. I will very much say that. So we'll talk a little bit more kind of upbeat now, or try anyway. A few of your players. Obviously, there's a couple of players that I specifically want to mention, but first of all, a question kind of to you. Who are your kind of standout players in what has been a really tough run? Are there any players that have really kind of stood out and thought, you know what, if it wasn't for this person, it could have been 10 times worse?
I mean, I feel like defensively we haven't been that bad. I mean, the 1 point that we did get this season was a goalless draw at Portsmouth, and that was a really good defensive effort. And then in other games, we've only conceded 1 goal, and have looked quite solid. And that was kind of the foundation for how we did last season. So I think Lewis Freestone's still been pretty good. And we've got a young centre-back on loan from Bournemouth called Owen Bevan, who's looked good in the last 2 or 3 games. He's looked quite promising. Wales under-21 international. Will Ferry, our left wing-back, we switched to a 4-3-3 last weekend, and he didn't look so comfortable in a 4, but if he's playing as a wing-back in a 5-3-2 or a 3-5-2, he's really good going forward. So Elliot Bonds had a really good game last weekend, and he hasn't had the worst season, even though he was injured towards the start. We've got, this is another factor that's slightly bizarre. We've actually got 7 loanees, and obviously we can only have 5 of those in a matchday squad. And we thought that was due to a couple of them having long-term injuries, but it now turns out that they're all fit. So there's a few of those who we've seen bits, flashes of, who look quite promising. We've got Jovan Malcolm, who's a sort of wide forward who's on loan from West Brom, who nearly scored on Saturday, hit the bar. We've got Cam Pupion, who's an attacking midfielder / winger, Australian loanee from Brighton, who looks quite promising. So there's a few people that I'd like to think that we'll start to see more from in the coming weeks.
Okay, well, obviously, hopefully that'll be when you've got a new manager in the dugout, and obviously not on Saturday. But yeah, there's definitely some names on here that are good. I would like to just ask about a certain striker, Rob Street. So obviously he was at Shrewsbury back in the last season, wasn't he? I think only for the second half of the season. I might be totally wrong on that. But I kind of just wanted to know how he's gotten on. 8 starts in the 9 matches. Has he been someone who's just struggling to really find any kind of shooting boots, or just close but no cigar?
I think with Rob Street, you can definitely see the potential, but as with so many of our players at the moment, he's lacking confidence. He has got himself into some shooting positions. Nearly scored in the home game against Barnsley. Really good save from their goalie. But I think the chances he's had, he hasn't really hit them with any conviction. Kind of scuffed them, to be honest. But I know that we have given him a 3-year contract, so we've put a lot of faith in him. And I think we beat off some competition. And it's quite a coup for us to get someone who's only 22 now. I think he's just turned 22 this week.
Yeah.
Someone who actually played over 40 games last season for Shrewsbury. He was there for the whole season. And to have that youth and experience at this level is quite something for us. So I think there's a lot of potential there. He's generally been played. We have sort of switched to a 3-4-3 in the last days of Wade Elliott, and he was playing on the right-hand side of that. So he hasn't necessarily been through the middle and getting the chances, but he's got a fantastic work rate. Can't question his attitude, and I'd say that for the whole team, despite our struggles this season. So again, someone that, you know, with new coaching input, I'm sure we'll see a lot more from him. Yeah,
100%. And like you say, it's always a positive when you've performances maybe aren't going too well, but the attitude of the players never comes into question, and they are professional players at the end of the day, but it can be very easy to sort of lose all kind of sight of any kind of positivity, any kind of positive attitude. So at least you've got that going for you.
I would say that there was no, you know, to use a cliche, there was no downing of tools under Wade Elliott, and he didn't lose the dressing room, to use another cliche. The players were very much with him, and you know, their effort and commitment, you know, through the season can't really be questioned on the whole. It's just been a real lack of quality and kind of tactical nous at times, I'd say. Yeah,
that's fair enough there. And unfortunately, the league table very much agrees with you on that one. So there are two more players that I'd just like to pick up on. You may be able to guess who they are. Two former imps, Sean Long and Ellis Chapman. So we'll start with Sean Long, because obviously he's started 8, played 8. So he's obviously a stalwart in your defence, and he has been for a few seasons, obviously. Still performing at a top level for you?
Yeah, I mean, he's been with us for a long time now. He's been with us for 5 years. He's now the captain. Obviously, when we initially signed him, he was brought in as a right back or a right wing back. He's in recent times been a centre back for us, and very solid, very consistent. He's led the side well. Definitely grew into the role of skipper in the second half of last season. He actually played at right back in a 4 last weekend, and it's been years, I think, since he's played at right back for us. But he did very well. I mean, we have also, because of this, you know, stacking up of loanees, we've actually got 3 other options at right back. But in a flat 4, I think they preferred him. So it will be interesting to see what position he plays in on Saturday, because if we stick with the 4, he'll probably stay at right back. But then if we switch to a back 3, he'd be part of that 3. But no, you know, we really like Sean Long. He's been very consistent for us, and he's a really solid player, and hopefully someone who can try and pull us out of trouble as the season goes on.
Exactly the sort of player that you need in times like this at the end of the day, and, you know, club captain, both physically and metaphorically in that kind of sense, then proper leader. And then Ellis Chapman. Now, I know Ellis has had a kind of a bit of an up and down sort of time with yourselves, but what about so far this season?
He played against Reading away back in August, and actually played really well. We played pretty well in that game, and we were quite unlucky to lose 1-0 to an own goal. And he came on at left back in the Papa John's Trophy game away at Bristol Rovers, where everything transpired against us in that game. And he ended up playing left back in the second half. Ellis Chapman is an interesting one, because he has played a lot of games for us. I think he's probably getting on towards sort of 60 league appearances for us. So he's had quite a lot of game time during his spell with us. At times he showed like real technical ability. I think the fact that he's left-footed also makes him quite appealing to give you balance. Personally, I think his best spell for us was during the 21-22 season before Christmas,
Yeah.
I think that was his most consistent run in the team, and he was showing a lot of promise. He then got injured, and ever since then, it's been a real struggle for him. He spent a lot of last season on loan at Oldham, and by the time that loan spell was coming to an end, he was on the bench. So even 2 leagues below, he was struggling to be in their starting 11 every week. So he's probably featured a bit more this season than we thought he might. But he's still very young. You kind of forget how young he is.
Yeah.
So, he's, again, with a new manager coming in, it's a clean slate for all the players. And I'd like to think he's someone who could, force his way into the manager's plans. And I think he's someone that we can't be giving up on him yet. So
I think we'd all like to see him do well as Lincoln fans, I've got to be honest. Was always hopeful that he'd be able to do that here at Lincoln, and it just didn't happen. So yeah, he's again someone who I think a lot of us would always like to see do well, and would always like to see on the score sheet and sort of player of the matches and that sort of thing. So someone that I know I definitely kind of keep a little bit of an eye out on his career. Right. So then, Joe, I always wrap these up with a score prediction. Now, I know chances are, if you're being unbelievably optimistic, you'll be saying 0-0 because, there's no chance of scoring. Unless Sean Long ends up getting a hat-trick, which wouldn't surprise me, knowing our luck. But yeah, score prediction. What are you expecting?
So we obviously did our predictions on the Robins Report on Tuesday night, and I will stick with that prediction. I went for a 1-1 draw.
Okay.
Because I cannot believe that we'll go much longer without scoring.
Is that an own goal, or are you actually scoring for yourself?
Yeah, probably will be. Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. When I say we're going to score, I'm not fully confident it's going to be one of our players. But yeah, I'd like to think that. I think how it's looking at the moment, I think we'll have a new manager in place, but not in the dugout. I think they'll be there in the stand, and I think our players will be very keen, or should be very keen, to make a good impression. And that will give them a sort of renewed impetus. So, yeah, I can't believe that we won't score again. But then I've said that for probably the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm going for a 1-1 draw, which might be hopelessly optimistic, but can't get any worse at the moment. So
that's fair enough. I'm going to go for a 2-0 win, 2-0 home win. So for those watching, you'll obviously know we're coming up to the end of the month, and that means the monthly show will be out within the next week. And I was just starting to put together some of the graphics for it. I realised we've not won a game this month yet. And considering how kind of positive we all were at the end of August, it would feel a little bit of a kind of downhearted one if we then didn't win a game at all in September, through various reasons, But it would be nice to get a win. And I think a home win, keep the home league unbeaten record going. Nice 2-0 victory. I really do hope that can be the case. So that'll be my prediction personally.
Yeah, that sounds totally feasible given how our season's gone so far this season.
Yeah, well, yeah, it really does. Right, honestly, thank you so much, Joe, for coming on and telling us all things Cheltenham Town. Guys, make sure to go check out the Robins Report. Obviously, as Joe said, they recorded their podcast earlier in the week. So go and give that one a listen, hear what the full mood in the camp is. Well, I think we kind of know the mood, and it's probably not the most positive. But yeah, be sure to go check it out. As I said, the monthly show will be coming up soon. That might even be before we have our preview for Leyton Orient. So keep your eyes peeled. Make sure to listen to the podcast that will also be out tonight. I believe that's Gaz and Chris tonight. So yeah, make sure to check it all out, all the different usual social platforms. Joe, thank you very much. Be sure to go check out Joe and the Robins Report and Up the Imps.